And we are going to be starting off the show by discussing the very unfortunate passing of Jay Briscoe, Jamin Pugh, who died on Tuesday at the age of 38 after a horrible car wreck in Delaware. And we will get into those details, but that is obviously the top story that is going on right now. And I thought that was the overall shadow to me way over tonight's episode of Dynamite. I thought that it was, to me, the most pressing thing, and just seeing a lot of the performers on the show. I think you could see that, like so many people that have worked with this individual for years. And it just seems, throughout last night and today, just tons of tributes for him, and just a sea of memories and condolences. And, not to as well forget the fact that, two of his children were in the car, in the pickup truck as well. And one of them is very much struggling.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, beyond, I think, the night of wrestling, I really just, I think the entire wrestling world, internationally even, this has kind of, obviously been top of mind. And I would say, personally has certainly affected me, just in even trying to understand it all. And you can't understand it.
It's just, it's such a tragedy. I certainly was not in the mood of really watching wrestling tonight. To me, it was just, here is a father, a husband, a son, a brother. This, sadly, is Mark Briscoe's birthday today. On top of it, you just think about what that family is going through. And I'm just going to share the details for those that maybe are not up to speed on what occurred, because the Delaware State Police, they did put out a statement today and giving a bit more detail into exactly what happened. So on Tuesday at around 5:09 p.m., Jay was in his Silverado driving westbound on Laurel Road. And at the same time, another Chevrolet Silverado was traveling eastbound on Laurel Road in the same vicinity. And they state, for unknown reasons, the driver that was approaching Jay and his family failed to remain in her lane. It was a single driver that was approaching them, crossed the center line, entering the eastbound lane directly into their path. And this resulted in a head-on collision between the two pickup trucks in the eastbound lane. The driver that was approaching Jay and his family was 27-year-old Lily Ann Turnahan of Frankfort, Delaware, who was wearing her seatbelt. The driver of the other vehicle, Jamin Pugh, a.k.a. Jay Briscoe, was not wearing his seatbelt. Both drivers were pronounced dead at the scene. The two passengers in Pugh's pickup truck, identified as his 12-year-old daughter and 9-year-old daughter, were both properly restrained. Both girls were taken by ambulance to an area hospital and were admitted in critical condition. Alcohol involvement in this crash is unknown, and no other vehicles were involved. And this came out several hours after Ashley Pugh, the wife of Jay, had put out a statement on Facebook that their one daughter, Gracie, was heading into surgery on her back. And she went on to ask for everyone's prayers, and that they are hoping that her legs will be able to move again. The other daughter, Jaylee, who was in the vehicle as well, has some pretty serious injuries, but is stable and resting, and mentioning their third child, Gannon, who was at home at the time of the accident. This is a horrific story, just to go through all the details, but did want to bring everyone up to speed if they were not aware of those. So, I mean, to me, that has been just 24/7, everyone's concern within wrestling, and praying that his daughter ends up okay coming out of that, but both of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So many emotions in this one. Unfortunately, again, every time something like this happens, I feel like I have to say, like, unfortunately, in pro wrestling, we're not, we're not sort of, I guess, I don't know. We deal with like early deaths a whole lot, but it never like stops being incredibly difficult, especially in this case. And this dude is like a month older than us, John. Like, he's our age, and as far as like my fandom goes, I mean, I've known and watched this guy grow up, from being a teenager on ROH shows all the way until, now being a father of three. It's just incredibly sad. Obviously, there's a lot you can probably say about the man's career, but obviously my thoughts, and I'm sure most people's, are with his family right now. Terrible, terrible tragedy.
Yeah. We wanted to bring in for a couple of minutes Jordan Goodman from the site, who previously worked at Ring of Honor, to share a couple of thoughts about getting to work individually with Jay. And welcome to the show, Jordan. And also, we wanted to get just some of your thoughts about this, horrible tragedy.
Thank you, guys. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in wrestling. I'm feeling a lot right now, and it's been a hard 24 hours. Jay wasn't a great friend of mine, but he treated me as such when I did interact with him. And if I can express anything, like, Jamin was such a decent guy. I first developed a relationship with him as a fan, like most of us. And I was lucky. Ring of Honor relocated to Baltimore. And in 2012, they started doing, like, most, if not all, of their TV tapings initially monthly in Baltimore. And I would go to those shows every month. And, like, you go to a class or a religious service. I mean, you start seeing the same few hundred people and you develop community. And what was so remarkable about Jay and what he attracted was that, like, his literal family would be at these shows. And as we go on from year after year, you see his parents, you see his, their wives, Jay and Mark's wives, but then, like, kids, and then another kid, and then another kid. And the vibe of these shows were so cool. They were relaxed. The seating was it was what it was. And it was kind of like a family barbecue vibe of, like, the Pugh family just hanging out and interacting with any fans that wanted to interact with them. And so for me, like, my relationship to Jay began, like, as such. It was like him and his family, and I felt included in it. In 2017, I was afforded the opportunity to work full time with Ring of Honor, and just becoming a fan of Jay and Mark, knowing that, they were the heart and soul, and still are, of Ring of Honor. For me, working there, it was important for me to develop trust and respect with the office, with production, and of course with talent. And going into the job, I knew if I can earn the trust and respect of Jay and Mark Briscoe, I'm good. Like, to be honest, I really didn't care what anyone else thought of me. If they were good with me, then I was good. And I was really lucky. Third day on the job on a Wednesday, Jay and Mark drove down, as they often did, to Baltimore, and they were a part of a presentation to about 30 salespeople in training. And essentially, the job that day was for us to introduce Ring of Honor to these salespeople so they could then go out to their local markets throughout the country and know how to sell Ring of Honor. We were there to educate them. And when it was my turn to say my piece, it was so easy because I literally had Jay and Mark standing in front of me. I'd never met them personally at that point, but all I did was I just told the truth. I looked at them and I told these 30 salespeople, you may have your own preconceived notion of what pro wrestling is, but these gentlemen standing in front of you, like, they are highly trained, world-class athletes. And they are among some of the finest performing artists that I've ever witnessed live. And my intention was literally to tell the truth about Jay and Mark Briscoe in order to help elevate the genre of pro wrestling. They made it easy. And then after doing that, I got to hang out privately with them. We did a Twitter Q&A, and they just took me in as if I was their younger brother. They took me in as if we had been friends forever. We were talking about wrestling. We were watching wrestling on YouTube. And after that day, I felt like I earned the respect and the trust of Jay and Mark. And, like, it set me up for so much success going to work the live shows with all the talent, because I knew, like, if they had my back, I was good. And they didn't need to do that. And I really appreciated that.
Jordan, have you had a chance to speak to any former colleagues of Jay Briscoe, and what are maybe some stories or some sentiment that people are sharing with you?
I have. I've heard people cry that I've never heard cry before. Like it's fucking sad. And these are people that literally traveled the world with Jay, and really got to know him in ways in which, I never got to. What made me happy today was just seeing all the different stories. But even through text, because Jay was just so unique. So I'm seeing people I worked with or different talent just quote things that Jay had said, maybe the last thing that he said to them, the most memorable thing that Jay had said. And as I'm reading text, I'm literally seeing Jamin's face, and I'm seeing his expression, and I'm hearing his voice. And he was just such a unique presence. And when I hear his voice and I see his face, like I smile, because he was so, he cared, and he laughed, and he made everyone around him better. Whether that was top tier talent, lower tier talent, our production people, local hired production people. He just cared about people. It wasn't about ego or status, or politics. If you were a person in his presence, he treated you with dignity and respect. And I hope that's how many of us remember him.
I think Way hit the nail on the head, is that so many that came up in Ring of Honor, like they felt like they grew up with him. Like, here's this 18-year-old on the very first show, and was the constant from show number 1 to the very final, ROH under the Sinclair banner, but then even extending this year under the Tony Khan version. There is just never been a Ring of Honor without the Briscoes attached to them. So they just became, to many, the image you associate. And they were so, I mean this in the most positive way, they were so pro wrestling. Like they were they were the genuine article, even though you would watch them and be like, they can't really be this way off camera, but this was them. This was CM Punk made the analogy of them being like the Diaz brothers of professional wrestling. And it's a pretty spot on comparison. And, you can go through the matches, but the promos that everyone is going through over these last 24 hours, like these guys should have been on national TV every week cutting promos. Like they were just so unique. And I think harken back to an era of professional wrestling that we see less and less of today.
Jay Briscoe is the most believable wrestler I've ever seen. I can't think of any other pro wrestler that is more believable than Jay. And I'm someone that grew up with ECW not being far from me. Like he, in the 2010s, me experiencing the Briscoes, like they felt like actual pro wrestlers, to your point. They and clearly, we grew up with similar taste and experiences in pro wrestling. But yet they innovated and created contemporary style of pro wrestling. So I think the Briscoes are the ultimate bridge between what the three of us grew up on and what we enjoy today. The promos, of course, but just Jay's physicality, his presence, his eye contact, everything he did, whether it was in character in the context of a pro wrestling performance, or when I'd ask him, "Hey man, I got some kids, would you mind doing a quick meet and greet?" He was genuine, and I believed him every single time. And I think that's one of many reasons why we won't forget him.
One of the, we can't really speak about Jay Briscoe's life without speaking about the controversy that has been attached to his career for the better part, the latter part of his career. And that's, of course, the homophobic tweets that he once sent out. It's really interesting to study this particular case, because I would certainly say throughout the years, and especially over the past year, I think as a professional wrestling community, a lot of us have grown to accept the apology, and that seems like something that is incredibly rare. But I say a lot of us because a lot of us don't, and that might even extend to high-ranking executives at Warner Brothers, for instance. I always defer to people who have dealt with him, and certainly like in speaking to people like an Ian Riccaboni, who went out and vouched for Jay Briscoe, when he didn't have to, when many people didn't have to. That to me went a long way. What you've spoken obviously very glowingly of the man, but like in regards to the controversy, did you have any sort of conversations or particular dealings with him, or anything that indicated to you that the man had grown from the experience?
I never spoke with him directly about it. Jay fucked up, and he admitted as much. I'm sure he felt awful about it, and he took responsibility for it publicly, and from what I've been told privately many times. Every interaction I've ever had with him in person showed professionalism, class, respect, kindness, joyfulness. Yeah, he fucked up. He's human. I've fucked up too, many times. And if I were to fuck up, I would hope that if I owned it fully, if I kept showing up and doing good work, both just professionally and interpersonally between people, I would think after a decade, maybe I'd be afforded a second chance. And I think if we continue creating a culture where we just outright cancel people without a path toward forgiveness, what incentive is there for people to change for the better? Now, look, I say this as someone that is not gay. So I think my opinion only counts so much because I wasn't the one personally offended by the tweet in a way in which I identified with the insult. But I think we take this on an individual basis. And from everything I had ever known and seen from the man, I think he deserved a second chance.
I certainly, again, I look to people like Effie who have spoken in support of the Briscoes, calling them changed men, earlier last year, and I completely am in agreement, in that, like, how much space are we allowing for apologies? How much space are we allowing for people to, how much space are we giving to people that are, trying to tell us that these people might have changed? And I don't know the answer to that,
And what is the greater whole asking of people by going through said punishment? Are we looking at strict just punishment for the sake of it, or are we looking at individuals to reform, educate, and hopefully move beyond that, which from all accounts is something that Jay Briscoe successfully did? And people that vouch for him, like an Ian Riccaboni, who is not just going to pay lip service because he works with the guy. He is going to go out there and endorse that, yes, be like, this guy absolutely screwed up. And I'm not going to downplay it. Like, it was more than just a homophobic tweet. It was like making allusions to violence. I mean, whether you took that seriously or not, it was a horrible, horrible thing. And there was punishment due. And he greatly was punished for that tweet over these past 10 years. But if we are in a society where somebody is understanding how they messed up and they are reaching out to others and they're putting the work in, and you are seeing actions that reflect a reformed individual, and we're still saying no, too bad, then the mirror has to be placed on those as well, of where the problem, there is a problem on the other side then as well. And again, if there are people that cannot get past that, that's understandable. But this is an individual. He had it had a great impact on his career and his brother's career, who had nothing to do with this tweet, but stood by his brother. And they had many opportunities, this past year being a perfect example. And while I can't say definitively, I am sure that tweet had a big impact on how tonight's broadcast went in terms of recognizing Jay Briscoe, which I find to be, if that is the case, and I'll put the if out there, I find that to be just horrible. That on a day like this, that tweet still played any influence on a broadcast network that, as we speak, is premiering Dana White's Slap Fight League.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm seeing a little bit of pushback, from the chat room for bringing even the topic up, and
we have to talk.
I feel it's important because
we have to talk.
It's the man's life, and it is directly affected. I would say what might have arguably been the best year of his career. Think about what he and his brother achieved over the past year without national television, being ranked, or match of the year accolades and getting the amount of buzz. Every opportunity they had at bat with a big audience, they knocked it out of the park 3 separate times. Think about what that run would have been like on national TV if they had, that platform. And it's because of that one incident that has kind of denied them this entire time. And again, I look at this whole thing as just a reflection on me and asking myself, like, how much space am I allowing people, who might have left a sour taste in my mouth? How much space am I letting them to, achieve any sort of penance?
We have to look at the hard shit in life. I mean, like, that's the only way to grow or to move through it. Like, if we can't look at the stuff that makes us uncomfortable within us and amongst other people, and if we can't communicate about it with respect and civility, how do we evolve? How do we move through this stuff? I respect the fact that you guys aren't dancing around it, because it's uncomfortable, and it takes a particular skill set in order to do this with respect. I wasn't expecting to have this conversation tonight, but I'm always willing to be given the opportunity to defend Jamin Pugh.
Yeah, I mean, it's to me like it will be, a huge part about his career over these last 10 years. But I think also important is those around him that saw meaningful change. And I would recommend people listen to that interview we did with Ian Riccaboni last March, because he gave a very eloquent breakdown of his personal interactions with Jamin Pugh and what he saw out of him that gave him the confidence to go in a public setting, and also tweeting about it over the last 24 hours about the person that he had become, and that this tweet, I do not believe, should define his life, but it is a part of it, and we do need to talk about it.
And if you look at the outpour from basically every single person who has ever worked or has maybe even watched the work of the man throughout the years, I would contend to think that a lot of people probably accepted the apology a long time ago, but maybe didn't feel comfortable letting everybody else know until afterwards. And that part is sort of a shame. But at least in death, the world knows how much they appreciated this man's work.
Any final words you would like to share, Jordan? We want to thank you very much for coming on with us tonight to give your accounts of Jay Briscoe. And it's weird because today it was very hard for me to even start to look back at the career. And there's probably a time and a place to look at the great catalog of matches and promos and stuff. It's like my head is just not there yet when it comes to his career, because there's this family that is still in the midst of this. It's not as if they even have a chance to grieve yet. They're still in the battle with their 2 daughters.
I just want to send good energy to Jay's family, of course, to his daughters, to Mark, who I know well, as well, of course. I mean, it's his fucking birthday, man. Like, this sucks. It's a tragedy. The Briscoes are my favorite tag team of all time. I'm not involved with you guys, and I didn't get involved with Ring of Honor because I needed a job. I do it, and I did it because I love pro wrestling. And I love Mark and Jay Briscoe. So to his colleagues, his friends, his fans, and of course his family, I love you all. My heart's with you.
Jordan, thanks very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. And Jordan and Wei will be back on Thursday with the wellness policy. So we look forward to hearing both of you together, along with our man Neil coming up.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate it.